Alarms tore through the ship, and I nearly dropped my toolbox down the ladder shaft. Red light washed over the corridor walls. Somewhere above me, metal groaned like it was in pain, and I felt the whole hull shudder from an impact outside. "Daniel, get down here now," a voice shouted through my earpiece. It was Claire, and she never sounded scared, but she sounded scared now. I ran. My boots hit the deck plates hard, sparks jumping from a torn cable overhead. The ship rocked again, throwing me into a wall, and I pushed off it without slowing down. Every second mattered. Somewhere out beyond the hull, enemy fighters were circling us like sharks that had already smelled blood. I found Claire in the lower bay, pressed against a support beam, her armor scorched black across the left side. A jagged crack ran through the chest plate, right over her heart. One more hit in that spot, and the armor would not hold. Neither would she. "How bad is it out there?" I asked, already pulling my repair kit open. "Bad enough that if you don't fix this in the next 4 minutes, I go back out there with a plate that might not stop the next shot," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. I noticed that. I always notice things like that about her, even when the world is falling apart around us. "Then let's not waste the 4 minutes talking about it," I said. I dropped to one knee and got to work. The torch hissed to life in my hand, and I focused every part of my mind on the crack in front of me. Nothing existed outside that narrow line of damaged metal. Not the alarms, not the shaking floor, not the distant thunder of our ship firing back at whatever was hunting us. Claire held still, the way she always did, like stillness itself was a weapon she had trained for years to master. I worked fast, faster than I ever had, laying a clean line of new metal over the old scar. Sweat ran down the side of my face and dripped onto the deck. My hands moved on instinct now, years of training taking over where panic wanted to creep in. Another blast rocked the ship. Sparks rained down from a burst conduit above us. Claire did not flinch. I almost did, but I could not with the torch this close to her chest. 30 seconds, she said, checking a display on her wrist. "Tell me you're close." "I'm close." I was not lying. The new plate was almost sealed. One more pass, and it would hold against anything short of a direct hit. I finished the last stretch of the weld, clicked off the torch, and sat back on my heels to check the line in the shaking red light. It was clean, strong, better than I expected given the circumstances. I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding, and the words came out before my brain caught up with my mouth. "You're so beautiful," I said, looking at that perfect scene glowing faintly under the emergency lights. The ship went quiet around us for one strange second, or maybe it was just my ears playing tricks, because Claire went very still, stiller than she had been through the whole battle so far. "What did you say?" she asked. I felt my face go hot despite the danger everywhere around us. "The weld. I meant the weld." "Say it again," she said, and there was something in her voice now that had nothing to do with the fight outside. I did not have time for this. The ship rocked once more, throwing loose tools across the floor, and somewhere far above us, I heard the whine of engines preparing for another pass. But I looked at her anyway, at the crack now sealed over her heart, at the way she stood even now, like nothing in the galaxy could knock her down for long. "You're so beautiful," I said again, and this time I was not talking about the metal at all. She blinked, just once, and something shifted behind her eyes. Then the ship's comm crackled, and a sharp voice cut through the moment. "All hands, brace for evasive maneuvers. Enemy fighters incoming, 30 seconds. Claire snapped back into focus instantly, grabbing her helmet from the floor. "We'll finish this conversation later," she said, and there was a small, fierce smile on her face that had not been there a minute ago. "Get to a safety station. I mean it. Not until I know that plate holds. It will hold. You made sure of that." She was already moving toward the exit, but she paused at the door and looked back at me. "Say it to me again when this is over." I want to hear it when I'm not bleeding metal onto the floor." Then she was gone, boots pounding down the corridor toward the fighter bay, and I was alone with my tools, and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding louder than the alarms. I grabbed the emergency rail and pulled myself toward the nearest safety station, sliding into the padded seat just as the ship lurched hard to one side. Through the small viewport, I caught a flash of enemy fighters screaming past, weapons fire lighting up the black sky like angry fireflies. Our own defense turrets answered back, filling the dark with streaks of light. I gripped the harness across my chest and thought about Claire, out there in that battered armor, flying straight into the chaos, with a repair that had less than 2 minutes to prove itself. I had done good work, I knew that. But knowing it and feeling calm about it were two very different things. The ship shook again, harder this time, and somewhere, a warning light began to blink furiously on the panel beside me. I forced myself to breathe slowly, counting the seconds the way Claire always did when things got tense. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The old trick still worked, even now. Minutes stretched out like hours. I listened to the comm chatter, picking out fragments of information through the noise. Fighters engaged, formation holding. One hostile down. Then, finally, the words I had been waiting for. Enemy fighters retreating. All clear. The ship stopped shaking, the alarms cut off one by one, until the only sound left was the quiet hum of the engines settling back into their normal rhythm. I sat there for a moment, letting the silence wash over me, before I unclipped my harness and made my way back down toward the lower bay. Claire was already there when I arrived, helmet tucked under one arm, hair damp with sweat, but her eyes bright with something that looked a lot like relief. The armor across her chest was scuffed and blackened from the fight, but the plate held. My weld held. "You did good work," she said, walking over to me. "That plate took a direct hit near the end. I felt it. Didn't even slow me down. I told you it would hold." "You did." She stopped in front of me, close enough that I could see the faint tremor still working its way out of her hands. "Now finish what you started." I did not need her to explain what she meant. I stepped closer, close enough to see every small detail of her face in the dim light of the bay, the sharp line of her jaw, the steady focus in her eyes, even after everything we had just survived. "You're so beautiful," I said, slow this time. No rush, no danger pressing in from every side, just the two of us, and the quiet after the storm. She smiled, a real smile, one I had never seen from her before, in all the months we had served on this ship together. "I heard you the first 2 times," she said. "I just wanted to make sure I wasn't imagining it, with everything falling apart around us." "You weren't imagining it." "Good." She reached out and touched the new plate on her chest, right where I had sealed the crack less than an hour ago. "Because I think I want to hear it again sometime, when there isn't a battle happening." "I can arrange that." Around us, the crew began the slow work of checking damage, patching smaller cracks, sweeping up loose debris from the fight. Life on the ship kept moving, the way it always did after a battle ended and the adrenaline began to fade. But for one small moment in that lower bay, none of that mattered. There was only the quiet space between two people who had just faced something dangerous together and come out the other side still standing. Claire slung her helmet under her arm and started toward the corridor, then glanced back at me one last time. "Same time tomorrow," she said. "Bring your torch. I have a feeling this armor is going to need a lot more repairs before this is over." I watched her walk away, already looking forward to the next time metal would crack and need mending, the next time I would kneel in front of her with fire in my hands and words waiting on my tongue, ready to say them again and again, for as long as she wanted to hear them.